friends, it's Christy, and I'm thrilled to be back guest designing with my favorite things. Today I'm going to be making a card using the adorable A Tweet Hello stamp set. Love those little birdies. I'll also be borrowing a tree branch from Harvest Buddies, and I will also incorporate some pattern paper from the Plaid Patterns 6x6 paper pack. I've stamped my images with black licorice ink on some Copic-friendly cardstock, and I'm going to be coloring with my Copic markers today. I did have a little ink smudge on that first bird, so just ignore him. We're going to color the other two. I'm starting with my V's. I wanted to color the birds in a purple color palette today. I thought that would be kind of fun. So I'm using V20, V22, V25, and V28. And I'm starting with the V25 as my darkest on their bodies, and then I'm blending with the V22 and using the V20 for the highlight right on their faces. I like to keep the faces nice and bright. Then I'm going to move on to their wings, and I want that to be just a shade darker, so I'm starting with that V28. I'm going to lay in my shadows with that, and then I will blend out with the V25. I'm going to do that one wing on the far side of his body with just those two shades, since it would be cast in more shadow. But on the other two wings that are more exposed to the sun, I'm going to highlight with the V22. I felt like the midtone got knocked back just a little too much, so I'm going to go back with that V25, add a few flicks of that, and just blend with the V22 once again. And while I have those markers out, I'm also going to add just those darkest two shades to those areas on the butterfly. The next combination that I'm using is YR00, YR01, YR02, and YR04. I'm going to color in the bird's beaks with the YR04, and then I'm going to use that color also on their tails to just cast some shadow towards the base of their bodies. I'm going to blend out with the YR02, and then I'm also going to add a little bit of that to the bottom of their bellies. I'm blending out the tails with the YR01 all the way to the tips, and then blending their bellies upward with that shade as well. Then I'm going to come in with the YR00, and I felt like it needed one more shade because I wanted it to be nice and soft, so I added in the YR000. I'm also going to use those same shades to color in the rest of my butterfly. I'm starting with the YR04, blending out with the YR02, and using the YR01 for my highlight. So I'm just using the darkest three shades on the butterfly. I wanted there to be a little bit more of a punchy color on him. For the tree branch, I'm using E21, E23, and E25. I'm going to start with that E25 and cast a shadow on the underside of the branch. I'm also going to make sure to put a little shadow on each of those little twigs that are shooting off. And then I will blend upward with the E23 as my midtone. Then I'll bring in the E21 and just fill in all that highlighted area. I want there to be a nice contrast on this branch since it is wood and there is a lot of variety in color on bark. For the leaves, I'm using YG01, YG03, YG05, and YG07. I'm going to start with the YG07 and lay that down at the base of all the leaves. Then I'm going to blend out that with the YG05. Two of those leaves are kind of hidden a little bit behind other leaves, so there would be more shadow cast. So I'm going to blend those out completely with the YG03, so they're a little bit darker. And then for the other three leaves that are on top, I'm going to use the YG01 as my highlight. And to finish off the butterfly, I'll go back to my E25 for the body. And then I'll just trim these out with the matching dies. I've trimmed down my pattern paper with the A2 Stitched Rectangle Stacks Set 2 and cut out the center with the Jumbo Peekaboo Circle Window. Love that great stitch detail. I've also die cut a piece of snow cone cardstock with the cross-stitched rectangle, and I did not use a metal shim because I wanted to keep the dots intact. I just wanted to use it for some texture. I'll add some liquid glue to the back of that and adhere it to my Grapesicle card base. This is a standard A2 size card, so it's 4 1/4 wide by 5 1/2 tall. I've added some foam tape to the back of my pattern paper, and I did also add a piece of cheap white cardstock to the back of that just to give it a little more stability. And I'll adhere that down right over top, and it's going to leave just the slightest bit of a border around the edge to let that Grapesicle cardstock poke through. Now I can begin to add in my images. I'm going to trim down that tree branch just a bit so that I can tuck it under the edge of that die cut window. I've also added some foam tape to the back of most of that, and then I'll add a little bit more liquid glue to the edge where it's going to overlap the pattern paper. So I'll just get that tucked in there. I want it a little bit low of center because I want to have room for my birds at the top. Then I'm going to bring in a couple of clouds. This first one I've popped up on some foam tape, and the second one I'll add with some liquid glue just to have some more dimension in the scene. And those both came from the Rain or Shine stamp set. I just used the dies. I'm going to add some liquid glue to the back of my flying bird since that's going to overlap the popped up cloud and the popped up pattern paper. So it'll be resting right on top of that and everything will be nice and level. And the other bird is popped up on foam tape and I have his feet resting on that branch so it really looks like he's standing on it. For my sentiment, I've got a piece of scrap snow cone cardstock and I'm going to stamp it with black licorice hybrid ink. I'm using the sentiment that says, "You are such a tweetheart." There's a great variety of sentiments in this set. I'm just going to ink that up and press that down with the door of my Misty. I am going to ink that up twice so that I get a really good bold impression. While I have my Misty out, I'm also going to stamp the inside of my card. I always like to do this. I think it finishes off the card nicely. I'm using the branch again from the Harvest Buddies stamp set and the sentiment that says, "There's always room for you on my branch," which I think is super sweet. Once I have those down, I'm also going to line up 2 of the other birds that are included in this set, and I'll stamp those down right over top so that their feet are overlapping the edge of the branch. I've trimmed down my sentiment with the banner from the Blueprints 29 die set, and I love that it has that stitching detail on both ends, which is going to mirror the stitching detail on our window. And I'm going to line that up and pop that down with some more foam tape. You can see that I shifted the sentiment over to the left so that I would have room to add my butterfly at the top right corner. To finish off the card, I've added a sprinkling of sparkling clear sequins, and I'm going to fill in the centers with a dot of purple sparkle stickles. It's just going to add a really nice little bit of shimmer to the card and tie in that purple color with the birds and the pattern paper. I'll lift that up to the camera so you can see all that cool detail from the cross-stitched rectangle, and there's another peek at the inside. And that is going to complete our card for today. I do hope you guys enjoyed this month's episode of Christy Gets Crafty with my favorite things. If you did, be sure to give the video a thumbs up and leave me a comment down below. I love to read your feedback. Subscribe to My Favorite Things for more inspiring videos just like these here on screen.